City of Salina Building Advisory Board meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to do with any public comments from anybody in the audience that is here today that would like to address the board on any item that's not on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to item B, which is approval of the minutes from the
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second. Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes as written. Mr. Flory, did you have a comment that you?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is not really a correction of what has been reported, but a correction of the information that was supplied that is noted in those. Mr. Sean Miller, who is Executive Officer of the Kansas Building Industry Association, has had a conversation with the State Fire Marshal regarding code amendments. His information that he has passed on to me, and I have a copy of his email, is that code amendments not related to fire or safety do not have to be presented to the State Fire Marshal's office. In fact, they would prefer to not get those. He has indicated that he will have that conversation with Mike Schrag and our Roger Williams, our local fire marshal, and may have already had that conversation, but that information is forthcoming. So in our consideration of any code or code amendments, if it is not related to fire safety or other safety items and is not less, does not have fewer requirements than those codes, we do not need to submit those to the State Fire Marshal's office.
Okay. With that correction identified, would staff follow up on that and report to us at our next meeting concerning that information?
Once we have that information, we will follow up and
right.
provide a report.
All right, thank you. So the motion on the floor is to approve the minutes as written. Mr. Flory's comments, I think, will introduce a future meeting agenda item. So all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item C on the agenda is the Uniform versus International Code Subcommittee report. Of a staff report.
At the December 9th meeting, thank you, Chair and members of the board. The regular meeting of the Building Advisory Board, we reviewed and we discussed comparison between uniform and international codes. Upon conclusion of the meeting, the board made a motion to establish a subcommittee for further review and discussion of the comparison and a report back to the board with a recommendation. The motion carried with a 9-0 vote in favor of establishing the subcommittee. The members of the subcommittee appointed December 9, 2014 were Mr. Miller, Mr. Ravenkamp, Mr. Palmatier. An invitation to serve on that subcommittee was extended to the contractors in attendance at the meeting, and there were no volunteers at that time. In response to the board's directive, we've had 2 subsequent subcommittee meetings, and I have a brief synopsis of those. December 19, 2014 was the first subcommittee meeting. Staff presented the Uniform versus International Code comparison for review and discussion. Much discussion ensued, and upon conclusion of the meeting, representatives from IAPMO handed out documents entitled Talking Points. These documents highlighted some changes between the 2 code bodies. They were not addressed in the comparison that was presented that evening because did not have prior knowledge to those. The subcommittee then directed staff to prepare a comparison to address those points that were brought out in these talking points. January 9th, 2015, staff presented the counterpoints to the document entitled Talking Points. Again, much discussion ensued as to the differences between the 2 code bodies. And upon conclusion of this meeting, a decision was made by the subcommittee to make a motion for a recommendation to the Building Advisory Board as to which code body to move forward with in the code adoption process, uniform or international. With a majority vote, 4-to-1 vote, the subcommittee recommended moving forward with the Uniform Mechanical Code and the Uniform Plumbing Code. To allow staff adequate time to prepare the entire body of minutes and the supporting documentation for the board's consideration and review, it is staff's recommendation this evening that the board delay action on this item until the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Building Advisory Board, which is February 10th, 2015. And this for the reason that we've not had time to prepare the entire body of the minutes and other documentation which the board may desire to see.
So at this point, there's no action required. This is just a report as
correct.
to what transpired at those two subcommittee meetings and the direction that they're recommending that we as a board take. This will be on the agenda on the February 10th meeting, and at that time, we'll have time to have reviewed all the minutes from those subcommittee meetings, and time to then we will discuss at that meeting how we move forward. As we talked before, this really pertains to how these codes are reviewed and how the amendments to the city code has to come before us as a building advisory board before they go before the city commission for final adoption. So knowing which codes we're going to deal with and review in this next cycle is important for us to understand. So at the February 10th meeting, after we've got the minutes from those meetings, we will then proceed to discuss and determine the direction that's being recommended to us. Any questions or comments from the board?
The only thing I have is, at this meeting, January 9th, you had a pretty good crowd at the meeting. Is that right or not? I mean, there are 3 or 4 people.
It was well represented.
Okay. At that, I know the staff, or the board members there voted 2-to-1. Was there basically anything asked how the entire, everybody that was at this meeting, how they considered which way they would vote?
It was discussed between the subcommittee members, other members of the dais that was around the table, and the consensus was at the end of the meeting that the choice was made to move forward with the uniform codes as far as it relates to mechanical and plumbing. And that was what the board decided to vote upon, and what the board decided to bring to the what the subcommittee decided to bring forth to the board. And we will bring all that information to you in a subsequent meeting, in the next meeting, so that you may review all the minutes and information from that meeting and a recommendation from the subcommittee. But that is what they voted upon that particular evening.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions for staff?
Yeah, I have a question. The recommendation from the subcommittee comes to the Building Advisory Board, and we vote on whether we accept it or not. Is that correct?
That is correct. And after we have all of the minutes from those meetings, then once we've determined which direction we're directing staff to proceed with, then they'll prepare the comparisons and the amendments as required to make the International Building Code correspond to the Uniform Mechanical and Uniform Plumbing codes. And there's a significant amount of amendments to the code in order to make that happen, because anywhere it says in the International Building Code, wherever it refers to the International Mechanical or Plumbing Code, those items have to be changed, and in some cases, there's corrections that have to be dealt with. So it will take staff a significant amount of time to go through and do that. And the main reason we've chosen to decide now which direction to go is because there's a lot of work to make that happen, just like there was the last time we did this. So the subcommittee vote you have here before you in the staff report shows that that's the recommendation. We're just waiting for the supporting information from that meeting so we can proceed. And even if we voted today to proceed with that, nothing's going to happen on this until staff does all of their work in the comparison between the two. So this is just the next step in the process.
Correct.
Since there's no action required on this item today, we'll move on to item D on the agenda. It has to do with the comparison between the 2006 and the 2012 International Residential Code comparison. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair, member of the board. At the December 9th, 2014 regular meeting of the Building Advisory Board, we discussed topics for future meetings. The comparison of 2006 and 2012 editions of the international codes currently enforced in the jurisdiction. The City of Salina currently enforces the following international codes. It's the International Building Code, International Residential Code, International Fire Code. In response to the board's directive, I prepared the 2006-2012 International Residential Code comparison for presentation and discussion. Also included are the current local code amendments from the Salina Municipal Code and a comparison thereof to the 2012 edition of the International Residential Code. Formal code hearings have not yet begun, and the Building Advisory Board has not made any recommendations for adoption of any of these codes. And this agenda item is for informational purposes only at this time, and it is only recommended that the board establish a subcommittee, as we did before, for further discussion, review, and comment as it relates to the International Residential Code and those changes. So it's only our recommendations for, or we request that the board establish a subcommittee to further review these changes to the International Code, at which time, upon conclusion of the subcommittee meetings, we will bring those recommendations back to the board so that we may proceed with the code process for the International Residential Code at this stage.
And the information that was included in our packet basically is you've already gone through the
I went
2012.
through I went through the 2006, the 2012 changes to the international body of codes, and in addition to that, I've attached exact text from our Salina Municipal Code and all of the amendments. In this, the body of text, if it was on the email version, you could see it in color. Anything that was read is the exact text of the International Residential Code. Anything in blue is either changes to a section and or amendments that should remain because they are specific to the jurisdiction, and that's in staff's opinion. So these two comparisons are what I'm providing to you. In a subcommittee, we will have much more time to sit down and discuss each and every item and each and every amendment and see if it is indeed applicable. What we're finding more so now is the amendments more closely mirror, oftentimes, the exact text of the 2012 International Residential Code. As such, as the subcommittee works through this, we will have to make a decision, is the amendment even necessary anymore? If it's mirroring the same language, such is not the case. If it's something specific to our jurisdiction that we need, we either need to keep the amendment or modify the amendment to make it applicable for the 2012 edition.
This process, has staff made a determination yet as to whether or not you would proceed with the 2012 residential code once all the amendments have been adopted, or are you going to wait and have both the commercial and residential codes all go through the city commission at once?
It's our preference to have everything go through at once as an entire body. The 2012 edition of the International Building Code, International Residential Code, International Fire Code, and so forth.
Okay,
All go forth at one time.
all right. What staff is requesting is that I appoint a subcommittee that would work with staff to review all of these sections on the residential code. This being a residential code issue, I would like any volunteers, and this pertains to not only the building code, but also residential, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing as well, correct?
This particular one would, whereas the 2012 International Residential Code is all-inclusive body of code. It includes all entities to include electrical, mechanical, plumbing, everything within the body and text of the International Residential Code. So,
And this is
knowing the previous decision from our subcommittee as it relates to the uniform body of codes, amendments will be necessary to address the 2012 edition of the International Residential Code as it relates to mechanical or plumbing applications.
the reason I bring this up, because this is the first time in the code cycle that a code is, for residential, is all-inclusive.
That is correct.
And so, the subcommittee working on this is going to have to determine whether or not they agree with that or not.
Correct.
Or if they want the mechanical, or the mechanical and plumbing pulled out, and we have it be a part of the commercial code, which would be under the uniform mechanical and uniform plumbing. So,
Much work
yes.
on
a lot
this
of work
particular
involved.
code body.
Yeah.
That is true.
So, have any volunteers who would like to be involved with that?
I would.
Mr. Ravenkamp, Mr. Flory, Mr. Bixby? These two gentlemen will be as well. And for the benefit of those in the audience today, these subcommittees will be publicized, and anybody who wants to attend those subcommittee meetings are definitely welcome to. We're basically going to be taking the code apart section by section and applying it to the current city code, because what happens in our city code, it has to be amended to reflect the building code that we're dealing with and how those work together. So there are a number of things that have to happen for that to all work together. So the staff report for these items, has that been posted on the city website, or is there a place that anyone in the audience or anybody watching this today can get a copy of that information?
Of the information I provided you today,
Yes.
yes, we can put that on the website where it's available to anyone.
All right.
In addition to, specific to the members that you've selected, we will make sure that we have the appropriate email addresses, contact information, and for each and every agenda and for each meeting date for the subcommittee itself, make sure that the entire packet is available to those members along with the general public as well.
All right. We're basically building ourselves a lot of work here in the future is what it amounts to. And it seems like here recently our meetings have been fairly short, and we've had very little to deal with, but we're really trying to get through, you know, we're building up for this next code cycle, which it takes a lot of effort in order for that to be worked through and all of the issues dealt with. So bear with us on that.
Yes, be patient. It is a very long, detailed process. Much input.
Any other questions or comments? When we did this last time, staff made available actual copies of the code book to those people that were on those committees so that they didn't just have the text, but they had the full body of the code. I think that is important. The investments in the actual code text, and now most of the codes are available electronically. There's a number of options that you can have with regard to how you actually get the code information. So keep that in mind as we proceed through this in the future. That leads us to item E, other business and announcements. One announcement for any of you in the audience today: please make sure that you've signed up for continuing education credits for attending this meeting. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair and members of the boards. In item 1, discussion of future agenda topics, as we are doing with the International Residential Code and what was presented to you this afternoon. Additional topics and future topics will, of course, be the 2006 and 2012 code comparisons for the International Building Code, International Fire Code, and again, the Salina Municipal Code and amendments to each one of those and changes. In addition, item B, it has been requested by the City Commission that we present and discuss the 2012 International Energy Conservation Code in a study session. This particular study session is scheduled for January 26, 2015, 2:30 p.m. in room 107B, which is directly behind Mr. Flory. City of Salina, you licensed contractors, you can have continuing educations for this particular study session as well. For those of you that are not available for this meeting and cannot attend this meeting, I will also present this at a future Building Advisory Board meeting. Most likely that will probably be on the agenda for February 10th for those that cannot make it for this January 26th meeting, so we are all familiar with the same information that's being shared with the City Commission. Again, this is for educational and informational purposes, and there will be no decision from the board at the conclusion of this particular topic when it's presented to them next month. On item number 2, Mr. Rick Hoff, he's the Governmental Relations Regional Manager with the International Code Council. He has a presentation regarding new trends in building and fire codes and how the building codes are developed in the International Code Council. He's offering this presentation on January 15th, 2015, in the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce Annex, which is next door to us, 120 West Ash, and this is at noon. Seating's very limited on this one, so registration is indeed required. Please submit your registration to buildingservices@salina.org. Include your name, company name, and daytime phone number. And again, continuing educating credit could be offered for this particular presentation as well. On item 3, there remain 2 openings for youth members on the board. Expression of interest forms may be obtained at www.salina/ks.gov. And on item number 4, immediately following this meeting, we do have a property maintenance hearing, which is going to be a separate agenda and separate item. And that's all staff has this afternoon.
I have one comment about the City Commission asking for the International Energy Conservation Code to be presented to them at a study session. I would like, as the chairman of this body, I'd like the staff to relay to them that we would greatly appreciate the opportunity to review that code and give them our recommendations and not have them decide on their own without having public input from the people that it affects the most. So often when city commissions have a study session, that leads to a future agenda item on the city commission, and I think it would be very short-sighted on the commission's part to take this energy code around all of the people that will be greatly affected by it.
Duly noted.
I assume the other board members feel the same way?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other items to discuss today?
On the energy code topic, you've spoken with Ron Michelson about that. We had a study session a couple years ago regarding that issue, and never had anything finalized on it. I see Gary nodding his head.
Well, it's not 100% clear as to what the outcome was from previous study sessions and why the energy code was not included in or why it was amended out in Salina code as we currently stand. So that's part of the conversation that we're going to be having as to why that occurred, as one of the topics that I'm sure the City Commission is going to bring up as to why did that occur and why it was amended out.
Well, I can tell you why we never had any conclusion to that. I mean, to the subcommittee, or the subcommittee kind of stopped because of some issues with the building official at that time. So,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would agree with Mr. Robinson that yes, we did have a special subcommittee meeting that did start working on the Energy Conservation Code, and that did come to a conclusion prior to losing a building official at that particular time. But yes, that information has been brought out, and with the same overhead projector type information, the PowerPoint and everything will be added to, or is added to, the existing PowerPoint that's going to the City Commission. So they will have an idea of what was discussed prior to taking this information to them, this most recently. The other thing I'd like to add is on the 15th, the January 15th meeting that Mr. Hoff is going to be doing, there is really no meal that's going to be prepared or served during that period of time. So I would suggest that the contractors either schedule a lunchtime after or prior to, because this gentleman happens to be on his way to Winfield, Kansas, and just stopped off to do this presentation, which would be very similar to what he's completing in Winfield later that afternoon. So this will be just a short 1 hour, or shortly thereafter 1 hour time frame, and no lunch will be provided. You might get a cookie or a snack, but that's about as close as we're going to get.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, this meeting is adjourned.